So let's talk about something America loves to talk about: money. We talk about the stock market, we talk about taxes, we talk about how much a gallon of milk costs now, which, by the way, is insane. But there's one cost, one massive, soul-crushing, wallet-draining expense that often gets treated like a moral issue instead of what it also is: a terrible business decision. I'm talking about racism. It's not just a stain on the nation's soul, it's a hole in its pocket. A very, very big hole. We frame this conversation around right and wrong, and that's important. But what if we also framed it as smart versus stupid? Because holding on to systemic racism is one of the most economically stupid things a country can do. Think about it like this. Imagine you own a company, and you decide you're only going to hire people who have a certain hair color. Blondes only. It doesn't matter if the best engineer in the world has brown hair, or the most brilliant marketing mind is a redhead. Nope. You're sticking to your blonde-only policy. How long do you think your company would last? You'd be missing out on incredible talent, groundbreaking ideas, and a whole lot of money. Now take that same logic and apply it to an entire country for centuries. That's America's relationship with racism. It's a self-inflicted economic wound that just keeps bleeding, draining the country of its potential, its innovation, and its cash. It's the ultimate bad investment. This isn't some abstract concept. It has real, tangible consequences that show up on balance sheets and in government budgets. Every time a person of color is denied a loan they qualify for, the economy loses a potential business owner or homeowner. Let's zoom in on the human side of this economic mess, because that's where the real story is. The foundation of any successful economy is its people, their skills, their ideas, their hard work. But what happens when a system actively blocks a huge portion of its people from reaching their full potential? You get what economists call wasted human capital. That's a fancy term for a simple, heartbreaking reality. Millions of people who could be inventing the next iPhone, curing a disease, or starting a Fortune 500 company are instead stuck fighting barriers that have nothing to do with their talent and everything to do with their skin color. Consider the journey from the classroom to the boardroom. If you're a kid in a predominantly minority neighborhood, chances are your school has less funding, fewer experienced teachers, and outdated resources. You're starting the race 10 yards behind the starting line. Then, you get to the job market. Studies have shown that resumes with white-sounding names get more callbacks than identical resumes with black-sounding names. So, even if you overcome the educational hurdles, you hit another wall. This isn't just unfair, it's inefficient. The economy is missing out on the best person for the job simply because of unconscious or very conscious bias. It's like a sports team benching its star players for the championship game. This lost productivity isn't a small rounding error, it's a massive drag on the entire economy. When black entrepreneurs are denied loans at higher rates than their white counterparts, we all lose out on the jobs their businesses would have created. When women of color are systematically paid less for the same work, that's billions in consumer spending that never enters the marketplace. It's a ripple effect. That money doesn't just vanish, its absence is felt everywhere. It's fewer homes being built, fewer cars being sold, and fewer small businesses opening up on Main Street. The entire economic engine sputters because it's not firing on all cylinders. Now, if you're thinking, okay, Trevor, I get it, racism is bad for business, but how bad are we talking? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we have a number. And it's a big one. It's a number so big it sounds like something Dr. Evil would demand in a pinky-to-the-mouth moment. According to a landmark report by Citigroup, the bank, people who are pretty good at counting money, America's economy lost a staggering $16 trillion over the last 20 years because of racial inequality. Let me say that again. $16 trillion. That's not a typo. That's more than the entire annual economic output of China. So, where does a number like that even come from? It's not pulled out of thin air. The report broke it down. They calculated about $13 trillion was lost in potential business revenue because black entrepreneurs face barriers to getting loans and capital. Another $2.7 trillion was lost because of wage disparities. Hundreds of billions more were lost because of discrimination in housing and unequal access to higher education. These aren't just social issues. They are economic catastrophes. That $16 trillion is money that could have rebuilt America's infrastructure, funded research for a cure for cancer, or sent every kid in America to college for free, probably with enough left over for pizza every Friday. The craziest part is that this isn't a one-time loss. It's an ongoing economic drain. The report projected that if these racial gaps were closed today, it could add $5 trillion to the US GDP over the next 5 years alone. That's not chump change, that's a transformative amount of money. That's the kind of economic boom that would benefit everyone. Higher wages, more jobs, a stronger economy for all Americans, regardless of their race. Fighting racism isn't just a moral crusade, it's the most effective economic stimulus package imaginable. It's literally the key to unlocking trillions of dollars in national wealth. And let's be honest, when a massive financial institution like Citigroup, whose main goal is to make money, puts out a report saying, "Hey guys, you're leaving trillions on the table," you should probably listen. Alright, so we've talked about the money we're not making because of racism. Now let's talk about the money we're actively throwing away. And boy, does America love to waste money on this. I'm talking about the enormous financial black hole that is over-policing and mass incarceration, which disproportionately targets Black and brown communities. Each year, state and federal governments spend a combined total of over $182 billion on policing and corrections. That's billion with a B. Think of what that money could be used for. Better schools, affordable healthcare, modern infrastructure. Instead, it's going towards a system that often creates more problems than it solves. This isn't just about the salaries and the buildings. The economic drain runs much deeper. When you have entire communities that are heavily policed, you create an environment of fear and mistrust, which is terrible for local economies. Businesses don't want to open up there. People who live there are often caught in a cycle of fines, fees, and court dates that drains their savings and ruins their credit. A simple traffic ticket can spiral into a lost driver's license, a lost job, and financial ruin. This isn't making society safer. It's manufacturing poverty and then spending billions to police that poverty. It's a ridiculously expensive and inefficient feedback loop. And then there's the cost of incarceration itself. When you lock someone up, you're not just removing them from society. You're removing them from the workforce. That's a lifetime of potential earnings and tax revenue that vanishes. Upon release, they face massive barriers to re-entering the workforce, thanks to the stigma of a criminal record. This creates a permanent underclass of citizens who are unable to contribute to the economy, all while the public continues to pay for the system that put them there. It's a double loss. We pay to lock them up, and then we lose their economic contributions forever. It's like buying a car and then paying a monthly fee to keep it in a garage you can never open. Just when you think we might be starting to understand the massive economic cost of racism, along comes a plan to double down on it. It's called Project 2025, and it's essentially a playbook for making all the problems we've been talking about exponentially worse. If systemic racism is an economic fire that's been smoldering for centuries, Project 2025 is a proposal to show up with a tanker truck full of gasoline and a book of matches. It's a detailed 900-page plan to dismantle the very systems designed to promote fairness and equality, and to supercharge the ones that perpetuate discrimination. It's not a step backward, it's a leap off a cliff. One of its core tenets is the immediate elimination of all diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across the federal government. Forget the $16 trillion in lost GDP we just talked about. This plan says, let's lose even more. By gutting DEI, Project 2025 would officially sanction the very biases that lead to wasted talent and lost productivity. It sends a clear message that merit should take a back seat to maintaining the status quo. It's like the Citigroup report came out and the response was, great, our goal is now 20 trillion in losses. Let's get to work. It's actively choosing to make the economy less efficient and less fair, but it doesn't stop there. Project 2025 also calls for an aggressive expansion of the very law and order policies that fuel mass incarceration and drain public funds. It proposes using the military for domestic law enforcement and empowering a more punitive, less accountable style of policing. So all that money we talked about being wasted on cops and cages, this plan wants to waste even more. It's a strategy that has been proven to be both economically devastating for communities of color and a massive drain on the taxpayer. It's like trying to fix a leak by blasting it with a fire hose. It's expensive, destructive, and makes a huge mess. And finally, the plan takes aim at education, pushing for a version of history that downplays the role of systemic racism. By restricting what can be taught about America's past, it seeks to create a generation of citizens who don't even have the vocabulary to understand the economic problems we face, let alone solve them. Now let's zoom out even further, because this problem doesn't stop at the border. In a globally connected world, a country's reputation is one of its most valuable assets. And right now, America's brand is being seriously damaged by its struggles with racial injustice. When people around the world see videos of police brutality or hear about voter suppression laws, it doesn't exactly scream land of the free. This isn't just about bad PR. It has real-world consequences for America's standing, its influence, and its economy. Every major incident of racial unrest is an international advertisement that tells the world America hasn't figured out how to live up to its own ideals. Think about the global competition for talent. The world's brightest minds, the scientists, engineers, and innovators who drive economic growth, have a choice of where to live and work. When they look at the United States, they see incredible opportunities. But they also see a society grappling with deep, and sometimes violent, racial divisions. For a person of color from another country, the question becomes, do I want to move my family to a place where they might be judged or even endangered because of how they look? This racism tax makes America a less attractive destination, causing a brain drain that sends top talent to countries like Canada, Germany, or Australia instead. This reputational damage also affects business and trade. International companies and investors are becoming more and more conscious of social and governance issues. They are hesitant to invest in places marked by social instability. Protests, riots, and deep political polarization are red flags for investors looking for a stable environment to park their capital. Furthermore, America's moral authority to call out human rights abuses in other countries is severely weakened when it has its own house in such disarray. Leaders in China and Russia love to point to America's racial problems to deflect criticism of their own regimes. It undermines American diplomacy and, by extension, its economic interests abroad. Ultimately, racism isolates America. It creates a moral and political barrier between the nation and its allies, many of whom have moved further and faster on issues of racial equality. It makes the country look hypocritical on the world stage, preaching democracy and human rights while failing to secure them for all of its own citizens. This isn't some abstract philosophical debate. It weakens alliances, hurts trade relationships, and diminishes the country's power to shape global events. In the 21st century, a nation's strength is measured not just by its military might or its GDP, but by its ability to lead with moral clarity. And on that front, racism is a self-inflicted wound. So after looking at the wasted talent, the trillions in lost GDP, the crippling cost of mass incarceration, and the damage to its global reputation, the conclusion is pretty simple. Fighting racism isn't a partisan issue. It's not a culture war talking point. It is a straight-up economic and national security imperative. It is the single biggest thing America can do to unlock its own potential and secure its future. We've seen the bill for inequality, and it's $16 trillion and counting. The cost of doing nothing, or worse, the cost of following a path like Project 2025, is a poor, weaker, and more divided nation. That's a price no one can afford. The path forward isn't a mystery. It means investing in people. All people. It means funding schools equitably so that every child has a real shot at success. It means ensuring fair access to loans and capital so that entrepreneurs from all backgrounds can build businesses and create jobs. It means rethinking our approach to public safety, shifting money from punitive systems that don't work to community-based solutions that do. This isn't about taking something from one group to give to another. It's about growing the entire economic pie so that everyone's slice gets bigger. It's about finally running the country like that smart business owner who hires the best person for the job, regardless of their hair color. This is the ultimate test for America. The question is no longer whether racism has a cost. The data is in, and the cost is astronomical. The question now is whether the country has the courage to stop paying it. Will it continue to cling to a system that is actively holding it back? Or will it finally embrace the fact that its diversity is its greatest economic strength? Choosing equality isn't just the right thing to do, it is the smart thing to do. It's pro-growth, pro-business, and pro-American. It is the only path to a future where the country can live up to its promise and its potential. In the end, you don't have to be a woke activist to see the logic. You just have to be able to do basic math. $16 trillion is a lot of money to lose for the privilege of being prejudiced. It's a terrible return on investment. The smart money, the patriotic money, the money that builds a stronger and more prosperous future for everyone is on equality. It's time for America to stop making its most expensive mistake and start making its wisest investment in itself. All of itself. Because a nation that wastes the talent of its people is a nation that is choosing to fail.